Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we actually have a very special guest and an interview. But before we get going on that, I just wanted to kick off 2025 with a series on the body. As someone who's had the experience of trauma and neurodivergence, this has been my biggest hurdle to move through when it came down to my own self-development work. And for those of you who have been following along, know my story, know that my body has been something that I have been working on. I was sexually assaulted in 2022, which completely, I don't want to say derailed, but yeah, kind of derailed my connection with my body. But if I'm being honest, before the assault, I don't feel like I was very connected with my body. The assault actually kind of shook me to the core and really kicked off this process of how can I be in better connection with my body? How can I love my body? How can I care for my body? I started to look at my body from a different perspective after going through that experience. And the more that I think about my own journey with my nervous system, it really explains a lot in some of my past career burnouts where my nervous system simply needed a break because I was ignoring my body cues and overriding these cues so that I could continue to take action and be productive. I found a lot of difficulty when it came down to feeling feelings versus processing emotions in the mind because there is a difference. And the more I sat with all of this lived wisdom that I had and this knowledge that I have, I realize that it's kind of being hoarded right now up here and I need to get it out into the public sphere. So this month is going to be all about the body, the nervous system. So if you're starting off 2025 with some body goals, you're really going to want to tune in for the next few weeks of topics. Because I think the hardest thing to grasp is understanding that your unconscious mind has a huge impact on your body. You can be doing all the different types of diets, all of the exercises, all of the right things, and still not actually get the results that you want. Also, for context, I am somebody who has struggled with an autoimmune disorder. I tend to get psoriasis when I am not taking care of myself, when I'm going through periods of stress or transition. And there's so much symbolism around this too, because usually it's when I'm going through some kind of transition or identity upgrade or identity change that my skin tends to break out, which from a Jungian perspective, our skin represents our persona and like our skin that we show to the world. So it is really interesting that whenever I am going through a persona update, my skin usually will go on the fritz with that update. There's so much more to say about this, and I will share more about these experiences over the next few weeks as we dive into the topics of the body, the somatic unconscious, and how you can do shadow work with your body. And this conversation you're about to listen to is great. It's with Ebony Eros. She is a health coach. She's a dominatrix. She is going to nursing school. Like, she is all about the physical body and being present with the physical body. She gives advice on health, sexual health and wellness, especially for men. Before we get started on the interview, I just want to plug that I am hosting a workshop on January 16th. Replay will be available. I will put the link in the show notes, but the workshop is meant to be more experiential. There will be exercises. You will learn to connect with your own body wisdom, your own body shadow. We're going to be doing exercises to get in touch with your somatic unconscious. It's going to be great, again, especially if you have any goals this year around your body or your physical health. And if you're interested in going deeper or learning more, make sure to hit that subscribe button or feel free to book a one-on-one alignment session with me at no cost. All right, on to the interview. Today, we have a very special guest. Her name is Ebony Eros. She's a sexual wellness coach and educator. She's a professional dominatrix. She has a degree in clinical nutrition and dietetics. She's also pursuing her nursing degree right now. We're so excited to have her. Let's just start off by your journey into this. You've got BDSM, you've got health coaching, you've got sexual wellness. What started your journey?
So, as early as I can remember, I've always been interested in human anatomy in general. When I was a kid, my parents used to have this collection of encyclopedias and other health books in the house. And of course, I would navigate to the reproductive section of the books. And so I would always read those things. And also growing up, I have a lot of men in my family. I have
Mhm.
5 brothers. I'm the only girl. I'm in the middle. I have a lot of uncles, a lot of male cousins, just a lot of men in my family. And growing up, they would watch a lot of Black exploitation films. I don't know if you know what those
Mm.
are, but basically in those films, it was a lot of nudity,
Mhm.
specifically nudity of women and breast and all those things. And in a lot of those roles that the women played, they were dominatrix. They didn't necessarily say that they were a dominatrix, but they had that very dominating leader type of role. And they were also sex workers. And it
Mm.
was always interesting to see that. And outside of those films, growing up, we also had cable in the house. And so I would sneak and watch Real Sex on HBO. And then also a lot of the sex educators would be on HBO that I would watch and get information from, because even with all of that information I was getting, I am a preacher's kid. And so being a
Mm.
kid, I was very sheltered a lot of times from a lot of things. So I had to go out on my own and get information. And when I did become of age where sex was a discussion, my parents really didn't want to talk about it. So it was things that I pretty much learned through books and through, thankfully, my school still had sex ed. And of course, the major topic was abstinence. And I just was always curious as to why people were ashamed of sex, pleasure, the body, nudity. And as I got older, I just started to rediscover my own pleasure and my own body and how I relate to that. And then if I am ashamed, where did I get that from? Being okay with touch and knowing the difference between good touch and bad touch. I used to teach sex ed and I used to teach children a lot too. And I used to have those conversations on a regular basis. But how I actively got into BDSM, when I was in undergrad in my early 20s, I had a really good friend. She was a dancer while we were in college. And she would get invited to different parties and stuff, private parties. I was a bartender when I was in undergrad. So she would always invite me to come and help serve drinks and just help with the party. And she was like, "You can just make some extra money." I was like, "Okay, cool." Get to the parties. And of course, they wanted to see the dancers, but a lot of those men also were into different kinks and fetishes. They were into BDSM. And so they would request that we would either spank them or tie them up or degrade them in some way. Some enjoyed pegging, some enjoyed wax play, different things. So that's pretty much how I actively got into BDSM. I wasn't really getting paid like I am now as a financial dominatrix. But yeah, most of it was just for like fun, and it was exciting and to be, and naturally, if you know me, I'm a pretty reserved, quiet person. I'm like the quietest person in the room because I like to take a look at my environment and get a feel of everyone around me. And I allow my spirit and my nervous system to let me know who I can talk to and who's safe and who's not safe. So typically, if you meet me in public, I will probably be quiet. But in that space, I still won't say I'm the loudest person, but I am more dominant. I'm more demanding. I'm more outspoken. I'm more powerful. And as I've gotten older, I've been able to allow both sides of my life to come together. And I'm in my personal life and in my vanilla life, I'll say, I find myself to still be more outspoken, more direct, more just initial with my conversation and what it is that I want. And I'm straightforward with the things that I intend to do. So that's a short story.
No, that's great. No, thank you for sharing. Now, I find this so interesting that you said that you were a preacher's kid because I feel like in my work, I do Jungian coaching, shadow work coaching around sex. So I get a lot of people that have religious conditioning and
Yes.
religious shame.
Mm.
And I was wondering if you could just say more on that piece.
Absolutely. So yeah, like I said, I'm the only girl out of all of my siblings. I have a mixed blended family, rather, and being around all boys, there was a big difference of how they approached sex and intimacy and pleasure with them versus me. With me, it was just like, wait till you're married, don't do nothing, sex is bad type of thing. So for a long time, I really wasn't into that side of myself. Like I was a tomboy growing up. So I was the one climbing the trees and doing all the boy stuff. So I didn't really tap into the intimate side of myself until I became much older. But yeah, there was a lot of shame around my body. There was a lot of shame around me enjoying pleasure. I remember very early on, I got caught masturbating, and my mom freaked out about it, and she was like, "Where did you learn that from?" and all that stuff. And I used to have a lot of questions. I was always the kid that would ask all the questions, and they would just avoid them by telling me that it was either bad or just wait till marriage till you decide to have sex and all those different things. And then, of course, they would use scripture to deter me from asking a whole lot of questions. So, yeah, there was a lot of shame when it did come to sex and intimacy and pleasure. And even when I did become sexually active, I still didn't know how to speak up for myself. Like, I didn't know. I just thought early on, I just thought that sex and pleasure was for the man. And then I was just there as a vessel, as a body to give whatever pleasure it is that they wanted or desired, not understanding that my pleasure also mattered and my intimacy and what I wanted sexually also mattered. So I can say probably I'm 35 now. I would probably say it took me up until I was probably maybe 26, 27 when I realized like, oh, I can speak up for myself. I can say, I don't like this, or I can say, this doesn't feel good. Can you do this again? Or all those different things. Because again, how I was brought up. And once I did become sexually active, it was more of me thinking that I just needed to make sure that my partner was satisfied in whatever way. And
Mm.
again, still have people around me who have those restrictions over themselves because of lies basically that we've been told for a long time around what they feel that God wants us to do when it comes to pleasure.
Yeah, it's you're bringing this up, and it's something that I've been thinking about a lot recently. I work with mostly men, and this is something that you see. And actually, I want to back up really quick. When you said black exploitation films, did you mean porn or did you mean something else?
No, so black exploitation films, it's a title that was given to black films when it was a time when segregation was still very big in film and in just the industry in general. And so it was films that were made specifically around black characters, black topics, and they
Mm,
were
mm,
filmed in areas that predominantly were black. So areas like Detroit, Atlanta, Chicago, all those different cities that were really big.
mm.
A lot of those films were made there, and they were filmed and produced and written by black people, and the cast were always predominantly black. So it wasn't porn, but there was nudity in those films. And again, a lot of those films that I saw, they had female nudity. And then
Mm.
they also had characters like pimps, and they had prostitutes, and they had just a whole lot of different other types of characters. A lot of people in the black community, I would say, didn't like those films because they felt that it gave a negative connotation to the black community. But they were stories that weren't being told, and that they wanted to be told by the black perspective instead of a
Mm.
white producer or a white filmmaker making it and what they thought the black community wanted to see.
Got you, got you. Yes, thank you for clarifying. Because I think before we started, you're like, "Oh, I have my workaround word." So I was
Yeah,
like, "Was that a workaround word, or is that
yeah.
just something I don't know about?" So no, thank you,
Sure.
thank you for educating me. I was thinking a lot. Well, I was thinking about porn, and I was also thinking about just this idea of objectification of female bodies. And I'm sure you know this, but they've done studies that men really do register women's bodies as objects before that they register women as people.
Mhm.
And it's really easy, I think, for people to be like, fuck men and this is horrible and they're bad people. But really, the deeper layer of it that I've been really understanding is that the removal of the feminine aspect of God from mainstream religion is essentially what created this objectification. It's what created this, men that have these like Madonna horror complexes or these splits of the feminine. It's because the feminine's been removed from God and spirituality for such a long time. So I actually look at this as this isn't really a man's failing, it's society's failing for not integrating the feminine aspect of creation and of spirituality and of God. And these Abrahamic, stick religions that we're all super used to, it's very focused on spirit over matter. It really cuts the body out. It cuts out half of the equation, which is this idea of the body is something that you need to overcome. The body is full of lust and sin and all of these things. And I don't know, I'm just so happy that people are starting to bring this up more and be like, wait a second, the body isn't sinful or bad or it needs to be cut off. There's this whole other avenue of how we can engage with ourselves and our spirituality and our personal growth by really tapping into the body, which is why I'm so excited still to have you today because we're going to talk about all this body stuff. And you're in a gym today, and you
Yeah.
said that you were doing what today?
On Monday nights, I do stretch classes at 5:30, and on Wednesday nights, I do Pilates classes. And I did one last night, but I'm also going to do another Pilates stretch class tonight because I do have a set of clients who are wanting to basically tap more into their bodies and connect with not just their physical, but their spiritual selves. And I find a lot of times that people are very unaware of what's going on with themselves internally because we're such in a fast-paced type of world, like everybody's on go at all times and nobody actually takes the time to sit and be with just themselves, whether they're just taking some time to take some deep breaths or if they're actually stretching their bodies or if they're actually just sitting in silence. I find a lot of people don't know how to sit in silence and just paying attention to their bodies and what's going on, whether you have a cold or whether you have a headache or whether it's something is hurting you and you just don't notice it because you're always moving around. So today we're going to do some mindfulness practices, but we're also going to do some stretching and some Pilates as well.
I love it. You
Hmm.
also do your pro dom work. And
Hmm.
where do you see the intersection of how your different modalities might cross over?
Mindfulness, like I just said, a lot of people
Mm.
aren't very aware of their own bodies, and we're always wanting something to fulfill whatever void that we are experiencing or having. And a lot of people don't realize that void is you not sitting there with yourself figuring out, okay, what it is that I need to give myself before I can go out and fit and get that fulfillment from someone else or something else. Just utilizing the skills of all that, whether it's figuring out what foods they need to nurse their bodies or figuring out what parts of their bodies are tight and they need to stretch more and do more Pilates or exercise just in general to get their momentum up and to help with their stamina. Also, just sitting with themselves and allowing themselves to go through all the thought processes that they have in a day, whether they're good, bad, or indifferent. A lot of people don't want to sit in silence because they have so many negative thoughts and they don't know what to do with them and they don't want to really sift through them to try to figure out if it's their own or something that they picked up along the way. Utilize all the things that I know and all of my skills and allowing people to see that one goes with the other. Like they all intertwine with each other in some aspect of your life. And we have to really take the time to focus on those things in order for the whole body to grow, whether it's in your mind, your physical body, or in your spiritual body.
Do you have clients? I'm thinking about this because I used to have clients where I would have them on like a program. Do you do like Dom health coaching?
Yes.
I love it. I'm like, I might need one of those really quick for the listeners. Can you talk more about how engaging in BDSM promotes presence?
So learned as a Dom that being present and aware is not beneficial, not only beneficial for myself, but for the submissive or with whomever I'm playing with at the time. Again, we live in such a fast paced world that we don't realize that we're rushing. And then we also don't realize that we aren't paying attention to how things make our bodies feel how things make another person's body feel. For instance, being mindful and being present is important when you're doing, say, impact or play or pegging. I remember when I first started professionally being a pegger, I would intentionally make myself upset to make sure that I torture not, I won't say torture, but make sure that I inflict as much pain on the person that I can that I am pegging that day. And then I realized that's not right. Like,
Mm.
how can I say this person wants to be in pain? How can I say that this person is enjoying this? And even though I would do aftercare and they would, and I would ask them like, how was it? How can I change anything later? Most people would be like, oh, it was good and nothing to change, blah, blah, blah. But I had this one person, this one submissive who let me know. He was like, I felt like you weren't really paying attention to my body. He was like, I felt like you were just dumping whatever it is that you have going on me. And I really did enjoy it. And I was like, oh, wow. And it made me stop and think about my own sexual experiences where I felt that same way, where I felt like that person wasn't paying attention to my body. They were just dumping their stress and their frustrations on me, and I was basically their beatbox or their dumpster or whatever. And they were just
Mm.
relieving their stress and pain and trauma on me. And I had to remember, it made me emotional because it was just like, I've always told myself I never wanted nobody to feel that way. I never wanted anybody to feel violated or felt like they weren't in control of their own bodies, or I didn't want them to feel as if I wasn't present or paying attention to them. So from that day, I made sure that I would meditate before any session, whether it was pegging or we doing foot play or we're doing impact, whatever it is. I made sure that I meditate for at least 10 minutes and I bring in all good intentions. And then sometimes if the submissive is into it, I'll ask them, do you want to meditate with me before we start? Some of them are like,
Mm.
cool, yeah, let's do that. And I'm actually, now that I'm bringing it up, I'd say that I was going to add that as an option on my site to put as an add-on to do meditation before the sessions. And so yeah, like it's very important to be mindful and to be present because again, you don't want to have anyone feel that they aren't worthy or deserving to experience good pleasure, because pleasure is all our birthright, whether it's through BDSM or whether it's through an intimate partner exchange. So yeah, it's very important.
Yeah, no, thanks for sharing that. I did an episode on this a couple of weeks ago about like how to be a good dom or whatever, and I talked about this, but you just hit on something that I experienced too, that when I was a baby dom or when I was first starting out, I did it from this place of like, oh, great, it's a place where I can take out my anger. And honestly, I feel like the gates open where I had more submissives come to me after I had worked out some of that stuff because your magnetic point is, how do I say this? It's not coming from a place of good intention. So therefore, your success of being a dom, like I say, to be a good dom, you just have to be a leader within yourself. You have to do your own shadow work because at the end of the day, you're the one that's orchestrating this container. And my personal experience, and I'd love to hear yours, a lot of subs are there to get some level of healing. Maybe it's, or it could be like they're just going to the gym, right? They're getting a massage. They're getting their relaxation on from all of the endorphins and being able to surrender and let go. But a lot of the times you are the therapeutic practitioner in that container. So therefore you have to be on the up and up with your own spiritual hygiene and your own self-development. You have to be working towards that kind of stuff to be a dom because there's a lot of bad doms out there, especially with the rise of cyber doms.
Yes.
And you were talking about Findom. Oh, I have so much to say on Findom. So I would love to also hear, maybe for the listeners too that might not know what Findom is, can you explain what Findom is and what a FinSub is and your experience with that?
So FinDom or financial domination is basically when the dominant has full control over the submissive's finances. And typically the sub sends gifts, whether it's a physical gift with their own money or they pay for things, whether it's living expenses, trips, other gifts, hair, nails, education, whatever it is that they feel that they desire to do. And it varies. Some fin subs can send probably $20, $5. Some can send upwards to 1,000, 10,000, 5,000, whatever. And they rank in different things. And it's all consensual. I feel like a lot of people don't understand it because they think that, oh, they're just taking these people's money. No, it's a consensual exchange of power. And many times these people who are the fin subs, they are in control in so many other areas of their life that they want someone to be in control in this area of their life. So they want someone to come and use their money for whatever that they want to use it for and control them financially. And I find a lot of times, especially the ones like a whale sub, which is a sub that has a lot of disposable income. And they are typically like CEOs, business owners, Fortune 500 companies, all that stuff. And typically with them, I find that they are bored with their money. And so they have to figure out a way to make life exciting. And so the way that they make life exciting for them is to give the money to a beautiful woman or man, because I do know some financial doms that are men, and give them their money so that they can do whatever it is that they want to with it. And again, a lot of them are into other kinks as well, but they utilize the financial part as something that is what's most exciting to them because they are in control in so many other areas of their life that this is the part that they're like, okay, you have full control of this.
Yeah, no, I was wondering what you think about. There's a couple of things I want to say. One, it's really interesting because the findom kink really took off when I was doing my research around this right after the financial crisis, which I find
Yes.
really interesting, right? From just a shadow perspective, right? People, it's like the fear, the financial insecurity created a collective kink in our collective consciousness around this. But
Mhm.
I personally, and I just want to say this because I want to hear what you have to say about it. I personally never liked fin subs because, and maybe it was because I tried doing it when I was a baby dom and I was maybe like, again, I didn't have that right energetic set point. So I was getting people that I felt I felt like they were doming me, where they were sending me money because they wanted attention. And I don't care how much money you're sending me, I now have to answer you. I have to
Mhm.
respond. Or maybe I don't. Maybe that was my thing too. I could have just been like, I'm
Yes.
ignoring you. There's
Yes.
that. I was a mommy dom. So, I was very like caring
Got
and attentive. But I also see that I've learned that there's a lot of really unethical doming around
it. It is.
financial domination, because here's the thing, you're mixing sex and almost like gambling. So it's actually a double-edged kink sword it can be perhaps damaging to people to continuously engage in it. And as someone who I know is an ethical dom, how do you approach your subs to ensure, like, do they actually have enough money to be doing this? Is this something that's harming them? Do you have anything in place, or is it just like you intuit?
Typically, especially if they are the ones who are, I would say, well off, I guess,
Mhm.
all of my subs sign a contract. I will say that up front. All of my subs sign a contract, and I put in the contract that signing this guarantees that you are responsible for whatever it is that you send to me, and that there are no repercussions on my end once things are sent on my side. Generally, we have an agreement of how much is sent per week or per month or however frequently that they want to send. Even if they are wanting to send money, but they can't send like a whole lot at a time, most of them send gifts. Most of them
Mhm.
send a certain amount that is feasible for them. Because I always let them know, like, I don't want you to feel like you have to go in debt for me. I want you to be smart about your money. And so we'll do things like I'll make sure that they have something set up to where they are investing. And I'll make sure that they are set up to where they have life insurance or whatever type of insurance that they need in order to make sure that their well-being is taken care of. Because I'm like, if you're gone,
Mm.
then that's one pay pig, that's one sub that I don't have left. So they are taking care of themselves. And then it's also me educating them and educating myself around finances. Because again, most of them that are into findom, they are well off. And a lot of them teach me about stocks and, Bitcoin and trading and all that stuff. So many of them are well off. They have a lot, and I do mean a lot of money. And just because they send me something doesn't mean I have to give them attention. I will say, I do not like those types of subs that they feel just because they sent me something, I have to pay them attention or I have to send them something. Like, no, that doesn't mean that at all. So yeah, it can be annoying, but at the same time, like I have very strict rules about that too. Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, the fin subs were the neediest of
Yes.
like the subs, and it was just like, which is
Yeah.
funny that I ended up going into mommy stuff because
Right.
like also very needy, very, but like different. There was also respect involved where I
Yes.
felt like the fin subs, it was all like who's doming who right now, I
Right.
don't know.
Right. No, yeah, some of them can be annoying, but those the ones that I typically ignore, and then eventually I'll get some act right. But yeah, they can be
hmm
annoying.
I talk a lot about the spiritual kind of energetics of kink, and this is something that's been on my mind. So I just want to talk to you about it. But I've been thinking a lot about how actors do this, even psychic mediums do this, dominatrixes do it, whereas we're essentially opening up part of our consciousness to channel something in, right? For example, when I would play certain scenes where I was like mean mommy, I would be pulling from something that felt like it wasn't necessarily from me. Like I was pulling this character down, and sometimes it was even kind of eerie that I was able to channel that exact energy that might have been from someone's actual mother, that might have been from someone's actual abuser, right? And
Mhm.
bringing that down into a scene and like leveraging that as a form of healing, like in the way to actually bring it in and anchor it down. And so I don't know. I've just been thinking a lot about the like woo woo, like paranormal stuff that comes around with domination or anything like that. I don't know if you have anything to say about that, or if you even think about archetypally what's going on during a scene when you're channeling different energies, and if you have anything to say about that.
No, definitely. I definitely have moments, or just in general, like I do shift into a different, I would say, body. I definitely feel that as if something else is taking over me, or I have a different persona, I guess. I kind of, you know how, like, I don't know if you're a fan of Beyonce, but Beyonce, when
Mhm.
she said she goes on stage, she turns into Sasha Fierce. And it's just like when I heard her say that, I was like, okay, I get it. And I've heard, like you said, I've heard other artists and actors say the same thing, that they tap into something. So I definitely have my moments where I tap in, especially when I need to be more aggressive. I definitely have something from somewhere that comes into me and takes control of that scene or that time. Because I've looked at myself, because a lot of my sessions I record, and I've looked at myself in sessions and I was like, who is that talking? Like, that is not me. But yeah, I definitely have had those moments for sure.
Yeah, it's so interesting. It's funny because the more dominatrixes that you meet, they all are really into psychology, or they're into acting, or there's a ton of people that are in nursing that are
Yes.
also, because there's just this, they're really comfortable on the body, nothing really icks them out. They also make great dominatrixes. So I just find it so interesting that you're also going into nursing now. When do
Yes.
you complete your nursing program?
Ooh, so it'll probably be at least another year and a half. My advisor is talking me into doing like the master's and PhD portion. So I'm like, we'll see. But yeah, it'll be like a year and a half before I'm done with this part, and then probably go into the master's portion of it.
What called you to nursing?
So nursing has always been something that I've been interested in. Like I said, when I was a kid, I would always read anatomy books and the health portion of any encyclopedia or something. And it's just has always, I've always been interested in the body, in the human body and how it works, all the different organ systems. I've been blessed to grow up around my great grandmother. I had a couple of older elderly women around me as well that I grew up around, and they all were in some type of health or holistic type of, they didn't call it holistic, they were into like natural medicine and holistic health. And my great grandmother, she was a midwife, so she delivered babies, and she was very into just the female reproductive era and just making sure people take care of their bodies. I've always been around it, I've always been exposed to it, and it was just something that I always wanted to do. I didn't do it originally once I graduated college. I started, didn't finish. I have a history of lupus and having to deal with my own health and the stress of that. I was just like, let me just do something easier, which nutrition wasn't easy, but it was easier to go get through than it was the nursing. So yeah.
Okay, so question for you.
Okay.
I know you've got some cool, not well known, perhaps wellness tips, sexual wellness tips, health wellness tips. Like, what do you got?
Oh, let's see. I always tell people just exercise, eat good, and get some sleep. That's going to be like your saving grace when it comes to just sexual wellness. I know there are a lot of products out there that promote stamina and that promote, I guess, a better sexual experience. But for instance, the honey pack is like one of those things that people are using regularly now.
What's a
Um,
honey pack?
so honey pack is like it's a pack of honey, but it has a stimulant in it to help with erections for the male
Mm.
and the female. But a lot of the ingredients in it can cause issues with the heart, can cause issues with the kidneys, and it can also over time, especially if it's used regularly, it can weaken an erection. So I tell people all the time, a lot of those stimulants and sexual enhancement drugs aren't good. I wouldn't even use it one time because the body can get used to things quicker than most people realize. And then once you do it one time, your body's going to be craving it because of the ingredients that they put in it. And if you continuously use it, it's going to weaken anything or cause more issues than what you had prior to. Because, for example, I had someone recently reach out to me. He has epilepsy, and he asked me, what do I think about him taking honey pack or any type of sexual enhancement drug while he's on epilepsy medication? And I let him know a lot of stimulants like that, they have caffeine in them, and they also have other drugs in them as well. When you're on epilepsy medication, that caffeine can cancel out the medication, which will then lead to seizures. And it can also lead to dehydration, which can also lead to seizures. And so, having those drugs in your system, especially if you have a history of epilepsy, will cause more harm than good. So, I let them know, like, just exercise, eat right, hydrate. If you do smoke, I let anybody who know that smokes marijuana to try to go more towards cannabis teas, gummies, edibles, things like that, because you don't want to put smoke in your lungs because that can also impact your stamina. It can impact your heart and your lung health, which you need all that in order to
Mm.
live and to have a good sexual experience.
I love that you're saying, because the podcast is called Practically Awake. I'm all about the practical. Yes, it's so simple. It's just take care of the basic things: sleep,
Yes.
eat right, exercise. No, I was thinking, because we talked briefly before, you were talking about something around prostate stuff, or like
Mm.
prostate tips. I have a lot of men who listen. So if you have any health tips for the prostate, we're all ears.
Yes. So I get a lot of questions about prostate. I have a lot of men clients or just women who are married to men and they want to get them some help. If you have an enlarged prostate, it can impact in your ability to have or keep an erection. And many men have poor eating diets. They also consume a lot of alcohol, which can cause issues with prostate. And they also don't exercise. So I typically let men know to eat healthy. I won't say what type of diet you should be eating, but just eat healthy for your body. Consume lots of fruits and vegetables, lots of fiber, because you want to have one of the reasons why many men end up with prostate issues is because they don't have regular bowel movements. And to have a regular bowel movement, you want to have fiber, you want to have fruits, you want to have vegetables, you want to consume a lot of hydrating liquids like water or fruit based liquids or coconut water or milk if you're not allergic to coconut, because the coconut helps with not only just hydration, but it also gives you the minerals that you need in your body in order for things to move around. Also, another thing that you can do is do lymphatic massages.
Mm.
So the lymph system runs throughout the body, and we have a lot of lymph nodes around our glutes and around our pelvic area, hips, groin, and all those areas. So doing a lymphatic massage, whether it's a professional massage or you get your partner to massage you in those areas, it will help to move the lymph around. which will help then also heal the prostate. So doing those things also, I know a lot of men aren't into this, but if you are, prostate milking is another great option as well. So utilizing a anal tool, whether it's a wand or beads or something, exercise or to massage the prostate, that will help to minimize an enlargement of the prostate and reduce risk of prostate cancer. And also stress is another thing too. A lot of men go through stress, whether it's through work, family things, finances, economy, whatever it is, minimizing stress. So again, as we spoke about earlier, being mindful, being present, being aware of your own body and figuring out what it is that you need to do for yourself. So taking the time to be alone, whether it's 10 minutes of meditation or whether it's doing something that you enjoy, like if you're a gamer, getting on the game, or if you like watching sports, watch your sports. But taking that time to really be with yourself. Also, sitting in silence is another great benefit too, which again just allows that person to be aware of their bodies and figuring out what it is that they need to do. Also, make sure that you're going get your regular checkups every year. Every 6 months is what I recommend. 3 to 6 months is what I usually recommend. But yeah, just going making sure that everything is in balance. Also, getting your hormones checked. I know a lot of men don't think to get their hormones checked, but getting blood work done, getting your hormones levels checked, making sure your thyroids and all those are good. And yeah, and
I
those are
love it.
my
What dare I say, going to see a dominatrix and getting pegged is ultimately good for your health, is what you're saying.
absolutely. Absolutely.
I
It
love it.
is. It is. It,
What about on the women's side of things? Is it kind of obviously all the same stuff, right? Eat good, take care of yourself. I'm assuming like breast exams, right? But is there
yes.
anything else that maybe women most commonly miss or don't think about when it comes down to their sexual health?
A lot of women are stressed. A lot of women have autoimmune disorders, which are developed through stress. So, making sure that you're minimizing your stress, doing things that are pleasurable and fun to you, finding out what intimacy is for you, basically. A lot of people don't really know what intimacy is. A lot of people don't understand that there's a difference between intimacy and sex, and that intimacy is not sex. Intimacy could be something as simple as buying yourself flowers, or it could be something as simple as cooking yourself or having your partner cook you your favorite meal or taking you to your favorite restaurant. That's intimacy. And also figuring out what type of touch you like. Do you like to be touched or held, or do you like to be cuddled? Also, something I didn't mention, that I do professional cuddling. And I get a lot of women clients who want to be cuddled because their partner isn't into cuddling, or they don't know how to cuddle without it leading to sex. So yeah, it's I would say just being aware of what it is that your needs, wants, and desires are. And again, just taking care of your body, eating right, getting sleep. A lot of people don't get enough sleep, and moving your body when you need to. I know a lot of us have jobs and positions that require us to sit a lot and be at a desk all day, and we're not taking the time to really move our bodies and exercise. So just allowing ourselves time to move and be present with our bodies.
Yes, definitely. That's been a lesson for me too. I burnt out a couple of times in my corporate job, and
Mhm.
I'm really way better built to be an entrepreneur and like make my own schedule and do things on my own time. But then I realized like, oh, that's just also being a woman because our cycles aren't really on these daily
Yes.
they say like, oh, the archetype of men is the sun. Well, the sun rises and sets every day, whereas the archetype of the feminine is the moon. It's this longer cycle, 28-day
Mhm.
cycle. So,
Yep.
yeah, that's been really hard for me to unwind the conditioning of sitting in front of a computer for like 8 hours a day, like do your work when some days I just don't want to, and actually being able to listen
Yes.
to that little voice that says, you don't actually want to work. You want to lay down, you want to read a book, you want to take a bath, you don't really want to do this stuff. I still have to play whack-a-mole with those thoughts when they come up
Same.
of like, oh, like be productive, be productive. But It's weirdly the least productive I am sometimes is when I actually do my best or I
And
have the best financial month with my business. So it's seems counterintuitive, but I think for women, like you said, like the nervous system and knowing yourself better and our bodies better and yeah.
yeah, because the nervous system is directly connected to our sexual wellness. If your nervous system is like, I don't want to do this, then you're not going to experience an arousing experience or sensation. You're not going to be fully present to even enjoy whatever it is that you're experiencing, whether it's a platonic sexual relationship or you're having an experience with the dom. Like, you're not going to be there to enjoy it because your subconscious mind is like, oh, I got bills to pay, oh, I got this to do when I get back home, or oh, the kids need this and that. You can't enjoy it because your mind is so controlled and so filled with other tasks that you have to do. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Tell me more about pleasure plate.
Yeah, so I have an e-workbook. It's called The Pleasure Plate, and it's basically around nutrition, sexual wellness, and holistic health. And it's basically the entire thing that we've been talking about this whole time of being present and aware, understanding your body, because I found that a lot of people don't understand human anatomy and how the body works. And so I break it down. I have a background in education, so I used to teach. I kind of broke it down in like a very simple way that a kid could understand it. And I talk about, there's a section in the workbook where I talk about certain foods that you can consume that help with stamina, that help with a healthy cycle, that help with prostate, and so many other things. It's 100 pages, and I've talked about various topics. I also dip into like kinks and fetishes as well, and how to safely and ethically explore those. I've also touched on, again, mindfulness and just being present with your own body and learning to touch yourself, because I know a lot of people have a problem with like masturbation and touch and pleasure. So it's first learning and exploring your own body, and then going out and exploring someone else's or allowing someone else to explore yours. Because I find a lot of times, especially when I go to these lifestyle parties, that people come and they don't realize what they want to experience, and so they just get into whatever, and then they feel pressured to encounter and interact with other people. And it's, you don't have to do anything just because you're there. You can literally just be there and watch and learn, and then if you're comfortable enough, you can jump in and join someone else, but you don't have to do anything. But I find that a lot of times, because again, people aren't comfortable with their own bodies, so they're just going with what they see and doing what they think is the right thing to do in that moment. Yeah.
Question for you, because you're talking
Yeah.
about masturbation. I definitely have some clients, and just in general, this has been something that's come up. What are your thoughts on porn addiction?
Ooh, I feel like it's a dependency thing.
Mm,
Again, I think it's based around shame and not knowing what it is that they want for themselves. So they would much rather watch someone else experience it versus themselves actually experience it. Because I find, even with my own clients, I have a client who he likes anal porn. And I asked him, I was like, so what is your thing with anal porn? Like, why do you like watching it so much? He eventually was like, feel I want to experience it, but I feel like if I do, I would be perceived as gay. And a lot of men think like that. And that's why a lot of men don't want to do pegging, because they were like, oh, that's gay. I don't want to be gay. I don't want that. No. But it's not. That's something that you're experiencing. If that's something that you want, then do it. But don't let society's rules dictate what you find or what you feel is gay or not gay. So I like, do you like men? He was like, no, I don't like men. I just want to be pegged by a woman. Okay, that's not gay
yeah,
to me.
totally. No, yeah, no, I agree with you on the shame piece. I feel like whenever there's a compulsion around something, it's usually because there's
Hmm.
shadow content, there's shame, there's something wrapped up in it that that's where the fixation is coming in. I also, when I did my pro dom work, as a mommy dom, I got a little bit of everything, but I specifically got people that were into forced feminization or sissification, and
Mhm.
forced by was my other big one. But it was this realization that the homosexual shadow in men is so deeply ingrained because I even remember, I don't know how old you are, but was it that long ago where people were using the term gay as it was this thing, right?
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
especially men, they're not allowed to have intimate relationships with other men without it being gay. So
Yep.
it's like our societal programming has cut men off from their male friendships, from their brotherhood, and
Mhm.
told them it was gay. So I see this come up in so many different ways, whether it be homophobia or whether it turn into a fetish, essentially, one
Mhm.
that they might not even want to actually act on. I got a lot of clients like that where they were like, I don't really actually want to act on this, but it really turns me on for some reason when you like force me to watch gay porn. It's
Right.
not gay if a woman makes me do it or whatever,
Right.
but it's like they're working out these fears and this shame around, well, what if, perhaps what if?
Yeah. And I think too, because of the restrictions that there are around men and how they express themselves, it causes a lot of men to be DL down low. And they have these dual lives where they are may have a happily married family with children and all that stuff. And then their other life is that they are with a man and they are abusing them because they can't be this way in public. I find it more, I won't say I find it more now, but I find it a lot, especially when I go to lifestyle parties and a lot of the men, you can tell that they want to be with a man because they're like forcefully watching them interact with another person when they should be present with whomever that they're with at the time. But yeah, I find that a lot at lifestyle parties where men are they're curious, but they don't want to because it's like they don't want to be perceived in a certain way.
Yeah, it's I've said it before on something else I did, but it was like it's so funny because as women, it's fine. We can go and
Yeah.
experiment and hook up with our girlfriends and it's whatever.
Mhm.
Experiments.
Mhm.
And for men, it's like, oh, well, if you suck one dick, you're gay for life. And there's all this social stigma around it. And it's really damaging to
It
people's
is.
psyches when there's that much rigidity around something because at the end of the day, if we feel like we do something that's outside of the social conditioning, it's talking about the nervous system. It's literally like, oh my God, the tribe's going to reject me. I really need to suppress this. And what we repress will always come back and it will come back in these ways. And it usually comes back in the sexual psyche or in this in sexual fantasy. But yeah, I also had clients that were married and also actually some of them, like I said, were like, oh, I would never actually do this in real life, but some of them did. And I put so many subs on prep like because they were just out there doing
Yes.
really risky stuff. They were out there cruising and just meeting up with randoms and had so much shame around what they were doing. And then they have their family at home. And it was just like one of my best friends is a gay man. And the stories that like he of the people that it's like he's just shopping at freaking Macy's, you know? He locks eyes with a guy and they're hooking up in the bathroom. And I'm like, what a life. I bet like I'm like, as women, we always have to like, fear danger for something like that. I'm like, oh man, if we lived in a world where that was safe, maybe that'd be fun, But
Right?
but
Seriously.
but yeah, but it's so true that the men that are on the DL are there's a way bigger population than I think people generally understand or know about. And
Totally.
I think there's a lot more bi men
Oh
for
yeah,
sure.
for sure. Definitely. But I do find now I want to go back to something you were saying about the it comes out like in their nervous system and it plays out in a different way. And I wanted to speak on the nervous system. When you suppress something for so long, your body rejects it and then eventually turns it to sickness. And it can turn into cancer, it can turn into Alzheimer's and dementia, and it can turn into a mental disorder. And a lot of people think that, oh, this just happened to them all of a sudden. No, it didn't. Like it's something that was happening over time because they were suppressing something that they wanted to do, but they couldn't truly live the life that they wanted to live. And going back to our original or one of our original topics, of religion, a lot of people in religion suppress their sexuality because they don't want to be demonized by the church and they don't want to be sent to hell by God. So there are a lot of gay and bi men and women in the church but they're hiding and they can't live out their true selves because they don't want to be seen as bad by God and they don't want to be rejected by their community, by their church community. And I know a lot of preachers and first ladies and clergy people who are absolutely gay and bi, which there is no problem. I have no problem with that, but I want people to actually live in their truth and stop lying about who they are.
Yeah, that's my work, right? That's what I coach people on individuation. So it's all about let's pop the hood and pull out all of these masks that you've created, all of these defenses that you've created, and let's get to the core of who you really are. And it's hard. It's hard work because the more
Yes.
that I've learned about the nervous system too is that shame is one of the deepest wired in our bodies because if we were ostracized from the tribe or whatever a really long time ago, we would surely die. So there is this natural inclination of whatever group I'm a part of, I need to fit in. They can't reject me, and if they reject me, then I'm mortally in danger. And it really takes a lot to override our animal instincts sometimes
It
and
is.
really clear that stuff. So, yeah. Well, I love this work that you're doing. Ebony, thank you so much for being here. Where can people find you?
So you can find me on all social media platforms as Ebony Eros, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, which I need to get back on posting on there. And my website is ebonyeros.net. And you can find there my workbook, The Pleasure Plate, that's on there. I'm also in Atlanta, Georgia. So if you are looking for someone to work with, you can find me here.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.